Wait, I called you in the middle of a holiday cube draft? Yes, Hero of Blighthold, it's terrible. Don't take Hero of Blighthold, you're killing me. That card's not gonna win you the cube. You're not gonna get better at the cube if you're taking that card. Oh, you wanna get better? Well then, I have news for you. Welcome to another episode of Dun Dun Dun, the Cube Connoisseur. Hello people. Back to talk about another top 10 cube list. Today we're talking about the top 10 cube cards that look great, but secretly are terrible. So these are cards that are not necessarily bad cards. They're not like horrible cards. They're not cards that necessarily need to get the boot from the cube, but they're cards that people take really early that I think could easily be a 12th pick, 13th, 14th, 15th pick. So let's get this started. Oh, well, yes, these are little claws on my hoodie. Thank you for noticing. Anyways, let's get going here. And calling in at number 10 is Hero of Blighthold. Now I put this one specifically on this list for Marshall Sutcliffe. Marshall, stop taking Hero of Blighthold. You're killing me. You're killing me. So Hero of Blighthold is a card that normally in most cubes is exceptionally good. So I can see why people think that it's very good in this cube. It's 2 colorless and a white, and if it attacks, it's going to nearly kill them, and then the next turn after that, it's going to probably completely kill them. And so for most cubes where you're playing a white deck, if you top out at Hero of Blighthold, your opponent is just going to lose, because you're gonna get a couple extra bodies, you're gonna hit them for 4 or 8 or whatever, you're gonna hit them for a ton of damage, and the game will just instantly be over the second it gets to attack. In the Vintage cube, Hero of Blighthold is just too slow. Obviously, if you have a Black Lotus and you get to cast it on turn 1, you're going to probably win the game. But there's a lot of times where you cast Hero of Blighthold and your opponent does Sneak Attack Emrakul, and you've just lost the game. Hero of Blighthold is just not good enough for this cube. If you're drafting the mono white deck, you want to be drafting small creatures that are very disruptive. You don't want to be drafting big curve topper creatures like Hero of Blighthold. So Hero of Blighthold looks great, is great in a lot of cubes, just not this one. Coming in at number 9 is Gifts Ungiven. Gifts Ungiven is a card that you think would be really good because it's a very combo heavy cube. And so a card like Gifts Ungiven, which gets you your combo pieces, essentially as like a Tudor, should in theory be good. But what I found is that it's just, first of all, there's just not enough ways to construct a pile. Like 2 piles of 2 that are always going, or sorry, to construct a pile of 4 cards where that no matter what 2 they give you, you're gonna come out and be way ahead. When you build a deck in like Modern around Gifts Ungiven, you know, you get to have like Burial Rites in there and Eagletorn, and just have that pile of 2 and you get to reanimate, and that's great. Or you get to have like a bunch of value spells, or like you get 4 sweepers, you get Wrath of God and Supreme Verdict and Damnation and whatever. So you always are gonna get the card that you need. In this cube, it's just too hard to get that. So you're just gonna get the 3rd and 4th best card in the pile that you've constructed, and often that's not good enough. Really, when really what you need is the 1st and 2nd best card. And because it costs 4 mana, it just makes it very slow. So Gifts Ungiven, just not a card that you should be taking. It looks good, it's just not that good. There's maybe a Reanimator deck that has Gifts Ungiven that it might be good in, but by and large, I don't think you want to take it. Coming in at number 8 is a card that I think in the Legacy Cube is one of Green's best finishers, and that is Avenger of Zendikar. Normally it's a great card. It's 7 mana, and you get an army of Saproleans, then often you play a land, and all those Saproleans become 1/2, so you have like 6 1/2s and a 5/5. And usually in the Legacy Cube, that's all you need. You just have an army in a huge army in a can. The following turn you play another land, you have 2 3s, you just have like 15 power on board, and you attack and you kill them. In the Vintage Cube, it's just really not good enough. It costs so much mana to cast. All the things easily die to a lot of the sweepers in the cube. Balance, Upheaval, any Wrath, like Wrath of God or Supreme Verdict, or Toxic Deluge. It also just, you know, just does nothing against a lot of the interactive things like Kiki G Key. You know, it's just a dude, and then they do Kiki G Key Splinter Twin. They do Splinter Twin with Deceiver Exarch or whatever, Pestermite, you've lost the game. So there's lots of combos that just instantly kill. Avenger of Zendikar is a big dude that makes a lot of dudes that might kill the next turn or possibly the turn after. But at 7 mana, that's going to be happening on turn 5 maybe, sometimes turn 4, and that's usually just not enough. So Avenger of Zendikar, you're out for being a high pick. I really think you want to be taking green cards that do something, like Woodfall Primus kills a permanent right away. It's very strong. You want cards like Craterhoof Behemoth, which just kill them immediately. You even want a big colorless dude like Mere Battlesphere or Sundering Titan. You want to have a big green creature that immediately impacts the board and attacks them, not Avenger of Zendikar. Coming in at number 7 is Birthing Pod. This is a card that I think a lot of new players to Cube think is always going to be great, and they think, oh, I'm just going to have this beautiful curve, and I'm going to go from one creature to another creature to another creature to another creature. And sometimes in some cubes you can kind of make that work, but a lot of spots in the cube are kind of thin for certain per mana costs, and often like these cards are suboptimal unless you have Birthing Pod and you only have one Birthing Pod in your deck. Oftentimes like you'll have drawn both of your 5-drops and all of a sudden you can't pod from a 4 to anything. So there's just so many times a Birthing Pod is not good, even though it's a card that was so good that it was banned in Modern, and it's obviously absurd in Commander EDH. It's just really not good enough. It's expensive and slow, and it's really hard to make a deck work with it. So Birthing Pod, you look good, but you're not good. Coming in at number 6 is a card that I think is going to surprise a lot of people, and I keep drafting it in my mono white decks, and I'm always like super unimpressed by the mediocreness of it, and that is Stoneforge Mystic. Now, Stoneforge Mystic is a card that obviously in Legacy is very good. It's a card that in Modern is banned because it's too good. And it can be good. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not a card that is always terrible, but you really, really need to have, I think, there's only 3 good equipment in the cube, and you need to have Stoneforge with, I think, at least 2 so that it isn't a complete blank. And those are Batterskull, Umezawa's Jite, that is how you pronounce it, Jite, Umezawa's Jite, or Skull Clamp. I think those are the only 3 equipments that are any good, and you need to get all of them. And even still, even if you have them, it can be slow. So against the mono red deck, sure, sometimes like Stoneforge into Batterskull, or against a control deck, Stoneforge into Batterskull can just win you the game. Oftentimes, you know, it gets you an equipment, but then, so you pay 2 mana to cast the Stoneforge to tutor up the equipment, then you pay 2 mana to put it into play, then you pay 2 mana to equip it, that's 6 mana just to have an equipment equipped, and it has to be so good that it just breaks the game wide open, and there's just not enough equipment that do that. So for that reason, I think Stoneforge looks really good, but is not that great. Coming in at number 5 is a card that in the Legacy Cube is so good, and I will often pick one it a lot of the time, and that is Vidalcan Shackles. Vidalcan Shackles, it's just a repeatable mind control. It's a repeatable card. You just get to take control of whatever creature there is you want again and again and again. But the problem in the Vintage Cube is that it's tied to the number of islands you have. Their power has to be less than the number of islands you have. And there's not a good super heavy mono blue deck in the Vintage Cube as it exists. In the Legacy Cube, there is, you know, with Master of Waves, Vidalian Click, Dungeon Geist, there are like these, you can kind of construct like a blue creature aggro controlled kind of deck. There's just nothing like that in the Vintage Cube, so you don't want to be playing a pile of islands. You want to be playing like 6 islands, maybe with an Underground Sea and a bunch of blue signets. You don't want to be playing a pile of islands. So it's hard to have enough islands to make Shackles good. It's also too slow in the sense that people are putting in Inferno Titans on turn 4. They're putting in Grizzlebrands on turn 3. They're sneak attacking Emeralds on turn 5. They're cards that Vidalcan Shackles is just completely blank against. So it can be good in some decks against certain matchups, but you don't know what deck you're going to be playing against. So it can be an okay sideboard card, but I just don't think it's nearly as good as it looks on paper or in digital, in whatever it is, on Magic Online, in bits. So coming in at number 4 is Grim Tutor. This is a card that looks so good. I mean, obviously everybody's when they get it, they think, oh, I just wish this was Demonic Tutor. And it behaves like Demonic Tutor. You just get to go get a card from your library and put it directly into your hand. So it's not card disadvantage in the same way that Vampiric Tutor is. But the problem with it is, one, it costs you 3 life, and that can be a lot against a lot of decks in the format. And 2, it's very slow. So it's not the worst, because sometimes, you know, you want a Grim Tutor for sneak attack and then you're just gonna win the next turn, so it's fine. But oftentimes, you know, like in a Reanimator Shell, you're just taking too long to get through your things. You're taking a whole turn off just to tutor. Something that Vampiric Tutor or Demonic Tutor don't ask of you. They don't cost you life. So Grim Tutor is still a decent card, and there's a lot of decks that do want Grim Tutor. It's just not nearly as good as it looks. Coming in at number 3 on the list of cards is Kiki G Key Mirror Breaker. Now, it can be a fine card. If you already are pretty heavy into that Splinter Twin deck, if you've already got Deceiver Exarch and Pestermite and Zealous Conscripts and Restoration Angel, obviously Kiki G Key is the nuts, right? But if you see it and think, oh, here's a Kiki G Key, I'm gonna go into, you know, the Splinter Twin Kiki G Key deck, I just don't think you want to be taking it that early. I think you want it to come really late after you're already into the deck for a couple reasons. One is it's 3 red to cast, and that's really, really, really hard, because the color combination that plays Kiki G Key is blue-red, and the blue-red lands and the blue-red signets are the most highly drafted ones. So it can be very hard to get a Scalding Tarn. It can be very hard to get a Volcanic Island or a Steam Vents, or even like a Wandering Fumarole. They're very hard to get. So it's hard to get that triple red mana. It also dies to everything, and also just costs 5 mana. I mean, and 5 mana is just, in the Vintage Cube, it's like 10 times more mana than 4 mana. You know, if you can do end of the turn on turn 3, Pestermite, tap down their land, Splinter Twin, you're gonna win a lot of games on turn 4. On turn 5, you're just not gonna be able to win nearly as much. So you want it in your deck, especially if you've got a lot of the recruiters and you've got all the pieces. But I don't think it's a card you want to take highly, thinking, I'm going to take Kiki G Key here and I'm going to go into the Splinter Twin deck. So coming in at number 2 are the Swords of X and Y. So what that I mean are Fire and Ice, Feast and Famine, War and Peace, Body and Mind. You know, these are cards that historically are very good. Everybody loves them in EDH, but they cost 3 to cast, they cost 2 to equip, and given that you don't know what colors your opponents are going to be at all in the first place, are often just +2/+2 on your creature that gets chump blocked, they're just really bad. They're really bad. I think they have a fine home in the Legacy Cube, where like Stoneforge Mystic is very good. But in the Vintage Cube, the swords are just really, really bad. The 2 really aggressive decks in the format, the mono white deck and the mono red deck, neither one of them want it. Neither one of them want to have to spend 5 mana for +2/+2 a lot of the time. They're just bad. Let them go really late. Don't ever take them early. If you have a Stoneforge, sure, you might take Sword of Fire and Ice because it's the best of them. You might take Body and Mind, but you know, I just think you want to pass them by. They look great, but they're not great. Coming in at number 1 is a card that looks awesome, is 100% fun to cast, will always give you a fun story, but looks better than it is, and that is Rika. It looks a lot like Show and Tell. It looks a lot like a great way to sneak things into play, because as we've discussed on so many of these other videos, sneaking huge creatures into play is great, but Rika, I think, is the worst of them, because they often get to put down really big answers in response. Especially, this is especially a problem in the cube leagues where you can have an Emrakul in your deck and they can have an Emrakul in their deck, which would never happen in a normal cube draft because you would know you're the only one with Emrakul. So you put your Emrakuls down, they get to attack first, and you've lost the game. But with Rika, unlike with Show and Tell, sure, you know, they might be able to put down a big Eldrazi themselves when you put down Emrakul. They might be able to put down an Inferno Titan when you put down an Ulamog. And that is great. You know, I mean, that's not great with Show and Tell, but it's still, you're usually coming out to an advantage. But with Rika, they also get to put down any permanent. So that means, you know, sometimes you slam down an Inferno Titan and they slam down Ugin, for example, or a card, and they just get to kill it right away. And because of that, I think Eureka is just not that great, especially in the leagues. That said, I highly recommend, if you've never done it before, building a Eureka deck, take it early, and then just like take a couple Tudors to get to Eureka, and then just take every fatty you can, because there's just something about everybody putting down all these huge fatties and the whole world blowing up and seeing a million triggers on the stack and losing the game in a most hilarious fashion that is worth the price of entry to the cube. Eureka is super, super, super fun that way, but I think it's overrated. I just don't think you ever want to take it, I think. I just don't. You know, you can maybe sideboard it in if they're playing a deck that just is not going to have huge things to put down, but I don't think you want to take it if you want to win. It's just not, it's not a show and tell. It really isn't. It's not an Oath of Druids. It's just much worse. Anyways, this is your favorite Snorlax, signing out.